Right now, somewhere in a front office you've never heard of, an executive is staring at a spreadsheet with one name on it. Not a name with a question mark next to it. A name with a probability next to it. 24%. 20%. 18%. Those aren't lottery odds. Those are the odds right now, today, that Tarik Skubal ends up on a specific team by August 3rd. So how do you actually put a number on where a superstar goes? Turns out, if you dig into the health reports, the contract fine print, and the roster gaps of 6 different franchises, you can get pretty close. Let's dig in. Let's start with why anyone cares. In 2024, Tarik Skubal didn't just have a good season, he had one of the rarest seasons in modern baseball. 18 wins, 4 losses, a 2.39 ERA, 228 strikeouts. He led the entire American League in wins, ERA, and strikeouts in the same year. Something so rare, it has its own nickname, the pitching triple crown. Most players would call that a career year. Skubal called it a warm-up. In 2025, he somehow got better. 13-6, a 2.21 ERA, 241 strikeouts, and a strikeout-to-walk ratio north of 7-1. Back-to-back Cy Young Awards, back-to-back seasons where he was, statistically, the best pitcher alive. And 2026, even coming back from surgery, even missing time, 3.09 ERA, a .95 whip, 89 strikeouts in under 76 innings. The talent never left. The only question mark was ever going to be his arm and his team's win column. Here's the detail that should really catch your attention. Analysts estimate that on a good offense, instead of Detroit's, which has struggled to score, Skubal's true value would jump dramatically. In other words, the best pitcher in baseball might not even be playing at his ceiling yet. That's the pitch every contender is making to themselves right now. But here's the part of the story that doesn't show up in a highlight reel. Back in 2022, Skubal developed a strain in his left forearm that required flexor tendon surgery, a procedure that ended his season early. He came back in 2023 and was arguably better than before. A 2.80 ERA, a .90 whip, AL Pitcher of the Month honors. Then, in May of 2026, it happened again. This time arthroscopic surgery to remove loose bodies in his left elbow. Detroit's official timeline, 2 to 3 months of recovery, which is exactly the kind of injury that gets whispered about in scouting departments, because loose bodies in an elbow can sometimes be an early warning sign for something much bigger, a ligament injury. Now here's the piece of this puzzle that makes it a deadline story and not just a rumor. Skubal is in the final year of arbitration, playing 2026 on a 1-year, $32 million salary. When this season ends, he becomes a free agent, a completely open market, where insiders expect him to sign the largest contract any pitcher has ever received. Detroit has made no public move to extend him. Which means, in baseball terms, he's what's called a rental. Any team that trades for him only gets him for the stretch run. A few months, one playoff push, no guarantees beyond that. It's a huge price to pay for a short-term rental. But when the rental is the best pitcher on earth, teams pay it anyway. So where do the Tigers actually stand? As of mid-July, Detroit sits below 500, 5 games out of a wildcard spot. If that doesn't change, insiders are blunt about what happens next. Some MLB executives are putting Skubal's trade probability as high as 85% before the deadline. The logic is brutally simple. Detroit gets zero benefit from holding him into the offseason. He'd walk in free agency with the Tigers getting nothing but a compensation pick in return. Trade him now at peak value or risk losing him for nothing later. There's really no in-between. The deadline for a decision? August 3rd. That's the day this entire question either gets answered or officially pushed to the winter. So who's actually in the room? Based on payroll flexibility, prospect depth, and roster need, here's how the race breaks down. At the top, the Atlanta Braves, around a 24% shot. Atlanta is all in on winning right now, with an aging rotation anchored by 37-year-old Chris Sale. They have serious payroll room, over $250 million committed, and one of the deepest farm systems in baseball to make a deal happen. Right behind them, the Los Angeles Dodgers at 20%. The reigning contenders have the best World Series odds in baseball on paper, but their rotation is quietly banged up with key arms sidelined. One insider has called Tarik Skubal's dream landing spot. Then, the New York Yankees at 18%. One of the only teams on earth that can simply absorb whatever price tag comes with him, sitting with the American League's second best championship odds and a hunger that hasn't been satisfied since 2009. The Milwaukee Brewers at 15% are the sleeper, a small market team that's never won a World Series in franchise history, sitting on a golden young arm of their own in Jacob Misiorowski, and a rare window where a bold trade could define a decade. The Seattle Mariners at 13% have a real specific need. Their entire rotation is right-handed. Skubal, a lefty who moves the needle more than any other player on the market, would be the final piece of a genuine World Series roster. And rounding it out, the Tampa Bay Rays at 10%. A team that almost never makes blockbuster trades, but one that's fighting the Yankees in a brutal division and might gamble on a half-season ace if the price is right. A few other names get whispered: the Cubs, the Phillies, the Guardians, but their payroll limits or rotation depth keep them a tier below these six. Before you lock in a prediction, here are the 3 wild cards nobody can control. 1. His health. If there's any sign of ligament trouble once he ramps back up, this entire market changes overnight. 2. Detroit's record. If the Tigers unexpectedly heat up in late July, ownership may simply decide to keep their ace and chase a playoff spot instead of selling. 3. The market itself. If the Dodgers or Yankees make a different big move first, it could shift demand and price for everyone else circling Skubal. 6 teams, 1 arm, a deadline that's closing fast. Whichever team wins this race isn't just buying a pitcher, they're buying the single best argument for a championship that money can currently rent. So, Braves, Dodgers, Yankees, or somewhere nobody's expecting? Tell me your prediction below and subscribe, because when this deal happens, you'll want to be the first to know.